Εδώ και ένα χρόνο, η καρδιά της κοινωνίας μας χτυπά στις μονάδες εντατικής θεραπείας. Εκεί όπου γιατροί και νοσηλευτές δίνουν καθημερινά τον αγώνα της ζωής απέναντι στην πανδημία. Για τους αγαπημένους μας, για τους φίλους μας, για εμάς τους ίδιους. Για την ελπίδα πως ο αόρατος εχθρός δεν θα μας νικήσει. Στους αγωνιστές των μονάδων εντατικής θεραπείας που έγιναν οι ήρωες της καρδιάς μας, η ελπίδα λέει ένα μεγάλο ευχαριστώ. Τους το οφείλουμε. Είναι η δύναμή μας και η ελπίδα πως όλοι μαζί ενωμένοι θα τα καταφέρουμε.
Καλησπέρα σε όλους σας. Είμαι ο Μιχάλης Κεφαλογιάννης, δημοσιογράφος σε ζητήματα υγείας εδώ και πάρα πολλά χρόνια. Όπως ήδη καταλάβατε από το βίντεο που προηγήθηκε, σήμερα είμαστε εδώ για μια χαρούμενη μέρα.
We are all here for a joyful day, a day where we will honor all those who have given themselves to this struggle against COVID-19, a battle that has been going on for months and still requires us to be patient. So, ELPIDA, the Association for the Fight of the Friends of Children with Cancer, has helped the children all these years. So ELPIDA has felt the need to help all those who work in the intensive care units, the ICUs, doctors and nurses, the heroes as they call it, they call them as we all call them. I must say that I was ill from COVID-19 in November. I will never forget the time when I returned home after a long period of loneliness, and the first person I saw was the person who was carrying me, and he greeted me and he said, "Don't be afraid. Everything will turn out all right." The same stands for the nurse that welcomed me at the Soteria Hospital. So, these are things that cannot be expressed with words. That is what ELPIDA is trying to do, to say a few words through their president and members of their board. And at this point, I should like to ask Ms. Badiana Bardinogianni, the UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador, to say a few words to thank all those people. Ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends, doctors and nurses, I hope you will allow me to address you as friends, since I share the feeling and the respect of everyone in Greece for you. For a whole year, you have been holding our lives in your hands with your knowledge, self-sacrifice, real toil, and selflessness. You are our own people. You are the heroes of our heart, and that is why we're here with you today. We are here to speak to you and to listen to you, to tell you, to say thank you, and to hear from you what this whole dramatic year has meant to you, what it means to you to hold the lives of people in your hands, our own lives in your hands, to listen to your experience, your fears, your expectations. This is a really special day for me. For a number of months, my heart, along the hearts of everyone else in Greece, is beating in the hope that we will be able to win this harsh struggle against the invisible enemy. The cold statistics and figures which we all listen to daily hide pain, huge pain and sorrow for the lives of people who are lost, lives that are not mere numbers. They are friends, family, dear ones. So these are people who are lost forever. They are not going to be replaced, and they should not be forgotten. So through this deep darkness of the heart, all of our souls are desperately seeking the light and hope that we will manage and that we will very soon be able to overcome this adventure. This hope, which for the whole Greek society is not a something faceless, but it has a very specific face, the face of every doctor and every nurse, your face. In my eyes, you are real heroes. You have gone beyond the role that science has given you. You have become the people who are our wardens. They are you support people, you are their families, you are the people you are on the side of people who are struggling on their own. So you hold our societies on their feet. We bow in front of you. On behalf of the whole Elpida family, let me express our gratitude and admiration to each one of you individually, to every one of the single one of the modern heroes who are fighting at the front of the ICUs of our country. Our decision to award to all those working in ICUs all over the country a medal of love and gratitude is the least we can do for everything you do on a daily basis. A small recognition of your huge contribution, of what you're doing, of your achievements. I believe that every single one of our medals, the medals of Elpida, closes and expresses a huge thank you on behalf of Greek society. From the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the Elpida family, and most of all on behalf of our children and their families, we all know what it means to fight for life. Thank you very much. I'd like to warmly thank His Beatitude, the Archbishop of Athens and all Greece, Hieronymus, and His Beatitude, the Archbishop of Tirana, Durres, and all Albania, Anastasi, who with their heartfelt words join us. But at the same time, I should also like to thank the Vice Chairman of the European Commission and the Commissioner for Promotion of European Way of Life, Margaritis Kinas, who has participated in this event. Let me also thank especially the Minister of Health, Mr. Vasilis Kikilias, who is fighting all this time and who has embraced our initiative with affection. Warm thanks to the eminent scientists, Mr. Ilias Moschelos and Meletios Athanasios Dimopoulos, who are doing all this important work. Their knowledgeable and enlightening words are guiding us during these turbulent times. We will also have the honor of listening to this woman who has become a symbol of this difficult struggle, professor of pneumonology and intensive care of the National and Capodistrian University, Miss Anastasia Kotanidou, who is responsible at this point for all the ICUs of the country. Her character, her knowledge, her modesty, and her work is a daily lesson for life, for love of the other, for hope. I would like to thank all those who will share their experience, what they have gone through at this very difficult point in their lives, moments that they are never going to forget. And just like they're never going to forget the people who were by their side all this time, the doctors, nurses, and all the members of the staff who are part of this life-saving chain in the hospitals. I should also like to thank the journalist Michalis Kefalogiannis, who is the moderator and who's always by Elpida. Let me close with one wish: health. Health for all, and let those who fight the struggle have endurance. May this year be the year of our victory against the pandemic, a victory that will find mankind united. Thank you.
Λόγια καρδιάς από την κυρία Βαρδινογιάννη
This came from her heart, and Mrs. Vardinogiannis' message was emotional, and so were her thanks to the people working in the ICU, our heart's heroes after all, and this is the motto that the people of Elpida have come up with to extend their thanks to the people of ICU, the ICU heroes. Next we will have pre-recorded messages by people who have fallen sick, who have been sick with coronavirus, so they had a first-hand experience, and I think they had a more close, they know more. I mean, those of us who were sick with COVID, after getting to know this invisible enemy, we had a different point of view. And the next speaker is actually His Beatitude Hieronymus II, the Archbishop of Athens and all Greece. I would like to greet and welcome your virtual meeting on the heroes of the ICUs, or the ICU heroes and our hearts heroes, that has been organized by the Elpida Association of Friends of Children with Cancer. As the waves of the pandemic quite often feel quite tumultuous and tempestuous, quite often we think about what St. Gregory said, that it's as if we are lost in the dark seas and there's no light inside. But what actually sheds light in our cause and what's a consolation is the beauty that comes from within people. Despite the dire circumstances, the trials and tribulations, people have not exactly lost all the elements and the features of what's within them, light inside, what keeps giving us hope, what is the image of our Creator. During the pandemic, we saw altruism, and we realized there's sympathy, understanding, selflessness, there's real charity, and these are the people who forget they exist to help us exist and go on. This is charity in its fullest sense. This is a real love of sacrifice. This is agape, the same way that Christ evangelized that. This is a big word, but I feel this is fair. We see these people work hard, they exceed the strict confines of their professional obligations. They are there to help out their brothers and sisters who are in pain. And these are huge assets for humanity. I would like to commend and congratulate Mrs. Vardinogianni for this important meeting, and I hope that Jesus Christ will bless her and will help prop up and strengthen the people who are working at the ICUs of our hospitals. Since we're talking about heroes, I will make a mental note of one sentence, what the Archbishop has said before. He said that the heroes of the ICUs forget that they exist to have us exist, to help us go on. And the next speaker is His Beatitude Archbishop Anastasi of Tirana, Diures, and all Albania.
It is moving for me to remember the 2 weeks spent inside the Evangelismos ICU unit in Athens, which operates in an excellent manner under the direction of the excellent Professor Anastasia Kotanidou and the responsible participation of very good doctors, nurses, and auxiliary staff. They were there prepared to respond to anybody's need all day long. With their very peculiar uniforms, it was as if they were taking part in a space mission. Their faces were covered, and communication with the eyes and the smiles between us was very limited. They still worked with knowledge, goodwill, and very, very often with calm heroism. At the same time, with the personal pain, our thoughts went to all the other people at the hospital and all the other IC units around the world participating silently and secretly in the one universal pain of man. From these very special trenches of the Third World War of COVID-19, our simple prayer in favor for peace in the world dispels everybody's concerns. As St. Paul said, we should be always remember the work of faith and the toil of love and the patience of hope. We should also congratulate the excellent president of ELPIDA, Mrs. Mariana Vardinogiannis, and the members of the Association of Friends of Children with Cancer for their initiative to remind everyone the heroic acts of all those who fight in order to treat the coronavirus, and the reminders of the gratitude that we owe them. It should be a very good thing if the state were also able to translate this gratitude to some in a more tangible manner to those who fight on the first line. Along with the warm thanks, let us all wish that may God listen to our prayers and make them endure all the toil. The COVID-19 pandemic, from which the whole world is suffering, is going to be defeated with solidarity around the world and with the power of love. We are all called upon to participate in this struggle.
Για ένα πόλεμο μίλησε
His Beatitude, Archbishop of Tirana, Anastasi, referred to a war where soldiers are knowledgeable, are good, and are quiet heroes. And now let us listen to Margaritis Chinas, who is the Vice President of the European Commission and Commissioner for promoting the European way of life.
Φίλες και φίλοι,
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, today's event, and I wholeheartedly wish to extend my thanks and commend Mrs. Vardinogianni and ELPIDA on organizing that. This event is the minimum we can do, the least we can do to acknowledge and recognize the contribution of the heroes of this crisis. The doctors, nurses, medical staff, auxiliary staff, cleaning services, each and every one and all of them together who have been selflessly working in the first line for months now to save human lives. And this comes from not someone who's adding one little element to the health policies of Europe or the European program to combat cancer, which we actually presented as the European Commission last week. This is coming from someone who, unfortunately, like so many other fellow human beings, experienced the very adventure of COVID and who was bedridden at hospital. So I know what I'm talking about. I'm now turning to all those heroes behind their masks. When I was discharged, I could see in their eyes they were smiling. And these are the people I need to thank. Big thanks to them. And of course, remember, ladies and gentlemen, dear heroes of the ICUs, when you go back home after long hours at work, you cannot still hug your family. I'd like to thank all of you for your immeasurable contribution in the form of humanity and sympathy and solidarity. Thank you very much, because you're rallying together and mobilizing those vital elements of the Greek society that set the example, and they should be a role model for everyone. Thank you so much, because your work and the values that you subscribe to are indeed the best possible icon and symbol of the European way of life. Europe is by your side, because Europe is you.
Όταν πήρα το εξιτήριο, διέκρινα το χαμόγελο κάτω από τη μάσκα στα μάτια του,
I could tell that, and this is what Mr. Schina said, and I quote him, I could see the nursing staff and the ICU heroes smiling behind their masks, and this is a powerful medication, if you will, to get life, to get our lives back and restart our lives. So this is the most important message, and it's powerful. Now we have with us virtually, you're still elsewhere, Mr. Minister. So we are joined by Mr. Kikilias, the Minister of Health, Mr. Mosialos, and the Rector of the Athens University, Mr. Dimopoulos. I guess, and you've said so much time and again, Mr. Minister, and this is a tough day for you, because to my understanding, you're possibly seriously considering the fact that given there's been a huge increase in the numbers of people who were admitted to the ICUs, there's huge pressure exerted on the ICUs, and maybe new measures will be taken tonight. But as of day one, you've been extending thanks to these people, Mr. Minister. Now, Elpida is again pitching in and extending its own wholehearted thanks to underscore that these people are the real heroes of the war, as the Archbishop of Albania said.
I'm very happy to see you well, strong and sound. This wish for good health has acquired a very special meaning. I should like to welcome this very important initiative on behalf of Mrs. Vardinogianni, whom we like to congratulate for the totality of her work. She has been standing by these children for so many years. She is next to them when they suffer. Mrs. Vardinogianni, thank you very, very much for all your kind contribution. But today, you are making one step further in the manner that Elpida wants to symbolically thank all those working in the country's ICUs, doctors and nurses. Your foundation is going to send a symbolic medal to all these people. I think that we have now completed 12 months of the pandemic. I understand that we are all very tired. People have made a huge effort. I have recognized this, Mr. Kefalogiannis. Everyone has. Those who should be supported, people that should be praised. They should feel that there is solidarity, that everybody rallies around them. So this is an excellent initiative. I'm very happy that I was able to join you with these few words. Again, congratulations to you and a big thank you to all those who have been working, who have been struggling against initially an unknown enemy. These people have been there, are there, and will be there. We have not lost the battle. At the beginning, we had the uncertainty of having to face an unknown, an invisible enemy. But now, more than 400,000 people were vaccinated, soon 500,000. So we expect that in April, May, and June, we will be able to vaccinate even more, and which will allow us to go to return to normality. Madam President, thank you very much for this initiative. Thank you, Minister. Minister, I know that this is a very difficult day for you. We will bid you good day, and we will continue. I would like to just one word to add, says the Minister. On the screen, I can see the two professors, two people from the medical world, the rector and Mr. Mosialos, Professor Mosialos, who have been standing by us throughout this pandemic at very difficult moments, and they have supported this collective effort publicly. I'd like to thank them publicly. So let me now proceed with give the floor to Mr. Mosialos, who is the professor of health policy at the LSE in London. I expect that you are still in London. That's where you're based now. And I would like to listen to what you have to say regarding this initiative by ELPIDA, the Association of Friends of Children with Cancer.
To begin with, let me extend my thanks to Mrs. Martinogianni. Thank you for extending an invitation for me to participate in this event, and this is a very important initiative on the part of the association as a whole. But you see, the overall work of the association, ELPIDA, and also the president thereof, Mrs. Martinogianni, is significant. It's always happening within the scope of the Greek health system. ELPIDA is helping fill in a gap that was there on the part of the state. So the efforts that the president is making at the level of funding, financing, and also organization, because we often tend to forget about the latter, and quite often putting together stuff is more important than funding as such. The initiatives that the president has undertaken, the association has undertaken, have always been very important, and they are being recognized by all of the Greek society. Allow me to say that the Greek national health system was wounded when the pandemic started, and our country was wounded given that we were exiting a 10-year-long financial crisis. We had lost 1/3 of our national assets and wealth, and we didn't have the assets or the wealth that other countries had in Europe, especially, and even Southern Europe. We don't have the modeling. services. We don't have the preparedness of Italy, including northern Italy, where the pandemic started off in Europe, and even Spain or Portugal to begin with. No way do we have the preparedness or a state-of-the-art health system that is available in Belgium, the Netherlands, or Austria and Germany. These are countries that are quite developed, significantly developed compared to us, and they have more scope, financial and economic scope, to actually weather this pandemic. Despite all that, we in Greece made very fast decisions. We had the first lockdown, which helped contain the spread of the virus to the minimum, and as a result thereof, Greece was not faced with huge issues during the first 6 or 7 months during the pandemic again. But then after the first 7 months, the pandemic came back. It was more dynamic, and again, if you look at the scope and capacity for our country, upon comparing us to other countries, of course, it's still a positive image overall, despite the data we have and what's happening in northern Greece in particular. Still, we're doing okay, and of course, we need more resources, and the resources we have, especially human resources, are precious, and the ministry has been working, and the state has been working in that direction, especially with a view to supplying the ICUs with as much as they can. And of course, we have the contribution that we need to acknowledge and recognize of the people working in the hospitals and the level of the ICU. So we're better off compared to where we used to be back in March 2020 in terms of combating this pandemic. And this is tough as such, but then again, we have to begin a certain discussion about how we can overhaul the health system, how we can make it more effective, more efficient, more rational, in order for us to beef it up all together, to make sure that it's not just going to rise to the occasion whenever there is a crisis, but that eventually it will be able to provide us with quality health services to everyone, for everyone, at any given point in time, regardless of socioeconomic features or classes or educational background, because it's a known fact that people who are well off seem to be more educated, so they have better access to education. So we need a more enhanced, stronger, more equitable, and more just and fair health system. And I'm hopeful that this is going to be one of the priorities of the government after the end of the pandemic. Of course, as we speak, we are better off. As the minister said, Mr. Kikilias, who's worked very hard over the past 12 months, and his efforts have been huge, we are better off compared to where we used to be a year ago. Now there are also medical procedures happening, and we have many vaccines. It's not just the half a dozen vaccines we've been talking about in recent days. There's another 70 that are being put to the test. There are clinical trials in progress as we speak. There are various, including the 5 known ones that have already been approved by the European Drug Agency. So we have lots of scope, given the capacities we have now, and despite the fact that apparently there's no full efficacy so far, still most of the vaccines available and the ones that have been recognized work well. And eventually we'll be getting more such effective vaccines in the forthcoming weeks and months. So we have to hold on. It's logical to feel fatigued and tired, but if we make it over the next few months, and just as long as we can stand this pressure, we will be, after a few months, able to weather this crisis in a better way. And I have to insist on what the Archbishop said before. This is not a pandemic happening just in Greece, so we can't provide solutions within the context of Greece as such. We have to look at the pandemic as something that's global, and solutions have to happen on a global level, or else we will be repeating the mistakes that have happened previously during previous pandemics. So we have to find a solution that will be global. And then, if we don't solve it globally, in the future we will be faced with resilient strains elsewhere. And they will be negatively impacting through mutations, especially people who have a weak immune system. Last but not least, you have chosen the best possible keynote speaker, Mrs. Kotanidou. Her knowledge, her hard work has been a role model for everyone in Greece. And I'm hopeful that her speech today will again help us out. She, I expect, is going to talk about, as the expert, she's going to talk about what needs to happen at the level of the ICU. After all, she was the one behind the coordinated and concerted effort that was extended on the part of the ICUs. Thank you, Mr. Masialos. You were exceptional, as ever. Within a brief period of time, you managed to tell us everything, and we even got through your statement, your address, answers, and replies about what's going on and what will be happening over the next few months. Let me make just one note. Let me insist on what you said. The people working at the level of the ICUs, they of course have been inspired by Mrs. Kotanidou, but they did it out of their heart and they worked harder than ever. The people who were saved, the mere fact of their being rescued and being saved today is thanks to them. Let's not forget about it. And
να πάω στον κύριο Δημόπουλο.
Over to Mr. Dimopoulos.
Mr.
Mosialos says, no way should we forget about the people who are working within the confines of the NHS of Greece. They did their best at the face of the toughest ever circumstances, despite of the fact that the system was not fully equipped to deal with that. So, thank you very much, Mr. Kefalogiannis. Over to Athanasios Dimopoulos, who is the rector of the Athens National and Kapodistrian University. Mr. Dimopoulos, you were one of the very first people who, as of day one, came out and made successive statements, and there was a barrage of statements and the information you gave us with. You were the first voice that was heard. And I'm saying that because I know what's happening in this field, and you were always to the point, and what you said was reliable. And this was the voice that everyone was listening to, including the people working at the level of the ICU. So they knew what was in for them and what was to be expected. They knew that we were facing, and they were facing, an unknown enemy they had to fight off.
Thank you, Mr. Kefalogiannis, for those very flattering introductory words. I want to thank Ms. Mariano Partinogianni, President Ms. Partinogianni, very warmly for inviting me to join all the distinguished guests to listen to the presentation by Professor Kotanidou. Mr. Mosialos was absolutely right. Not only does she manage a very important ICU at the Evangelismos, but as the president of the Intensive Care Unit Association in Greece, Society in Greece, is playing a critically important role as coordinator. This period has tried our country's healthcare system, but at the same time has allowed us to see the power of the medical school of the Athens University, the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. We were all pleased to see that in the past year, the brunt of the burden was borne by the laboratories, the COVID clinics, and the intensive care units of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. They played the main role in the effort to find ways to treat this very strange and multi-system disease. We have now been able to say that yes, people who will need to be treated in ICU units will be able to survive, and our survival rates can compare to the best results around the world. I refer to our ICU data from the Medical School of Athens ICU units. With its very important clinical work, especially at the ICU, we are very, very pleased. The National and Kapodistrian University of Athens worked in a very innovative research. It has now at the forefront of world development. In the period January to December 2020, the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens holds the #1 position, and its total contribution is 38% of of the publications in Greece. More publication from our daughters in international magazines, scientific magazines means excellence in our whole effort to deal with this pandemic successfully. And just like his beatitude, Anastasi said, the reward of the healthcare workers, especially those working in ICUs, should be given. And we are certain that this is going to happen. It should be combined with the recruitment of more specialist staff with better remuneration and by facilitating the testing and the trials for medication to fight COVID-19. Therefore, we express our congratulations, our gratitude to everyone working in an ICU, to those who honor the oath of Hippocrates, those who honor a valuable tradition of more than 180 years of contribution to man and society from our university. Thank you. Thank you, Rector, for this brief but very much to the point address. And it is now time for us to go to Ms. Kotanidou, who is the professor of pneumonology and intensive care at the National Kapodistrian University of Athens. She is the keynote speaker. She's going to refer to the world of the ICU, data, experience, needs the day after. And we are going to listen to much useful information for the organization of the healthcare system in this country.
Καλησπέρα σε όλους. Πριν ξεκινήσω την σύντομη
Before I make my brief speech, I would like to begin with my thanks to Mr. Dimopoulos and Mr. Mosiaros, both professors, for their kind words. And I would also like to personally thank Mrs. Mariana Vardinogianni and the association, Elpida, for putting together this event. My thanks come on behalf of everyone working at the level of the ICU. It is very important for me to acknowledge that my science and my profession is there to service the needs of help and help lives. So when you have severe cases, the task is demanding, even without a pandemic. Now, when there is a pandemic, the ICUs and the emergency units are loaded with people and crowded with people. Inside the hospitals, we are surrounded by people, professionals who are making their own sacrifices and who work on a daily basis to make sure they help out our people, the citizens. These are the health professionals who are inspired by their work. They enjoy it, and it's a source of power and strength for us too. What I was impressed by, especially during the first days of the pandemic, was the absence of fear, the sense of responsibility, and the sense of duty that the people working in the front line were filled with. They were faced with unknown situation. Back at the beginning of this pandemic, we were not well organized, and we were slightly less protected compared to what we had later, after we had everything we needed in our hands, material, equipment, and so on. Of course, overall, this helped contain the fear of the unknown. Now, let me discuss the historical background of the ICUs in Greece. It started in 1961. We had a special center set up at the hospital Sotiria by Mrs. Makrioti, the late Mrs. Makrioti, and then subsequently we had another ICU at the Laiko Hospital of Athens by Mr. Bilalis. A unanimous decision was made by the Central Health Council back in 1983. And so that was the decision that paved the way for specific doctors and specialties to work at the ICU. These were health professionals, including doctors, physiotherapists, and nursing staff, who, regardless of where they'd worked before, they would work for the intensive care units. So now we have intensive care units who have expert doctors, specialized doctors in 6 different fields. And these are doctors and nursing staff who are specially trained, and especially doctors, physicians, receive a 2-year-long training after the basic training and then take a test before they become ICU doctors. On the occasion of this pandemic we are going through as we speak, the pandemic which led to an increased number of, or rather increased need for more beds in the ICU all over Greece, the issue of manning properly the ICUs is more than an emergency, and this critical issue has nonetheless been brought to the attention of everyone over the past 10 years, and we've brought this to the attention of every single health minister of the past 10 years, because you see, an ICU is the very heart and the backbone of every hospital. In the absence of a good, well-working ICU, we can't have a strong health system. When there is a strong and purely and properly equipped ICU, we make sure that there are smaller waiting times and lines, and so a strong and powerful and well-equipped ICU also signifies an increase of the people who we will have operated on, regardless of whether they have serious diseases. That indeed helps us shorten the list of people waiting to receive such operations. Many studies have indicated that when you have critically ill patients who cannot find a bed at an ICU, then this patient unfortunately has less than 50% chances for survival. And when the pandemic started, at the level of the National Health System of Greece, we had about 600 beds in public, civilian hospitals and military hospitals. 600 is quite smaller, very small compared to the average of Europe, which is 12 beds per 100,000 citizens. And let us not embark on a discussion regarding certain EU member states, such as Germany, where the average is 29 beds per 100,000 people. Within a short period of a few days, everyone working for an ICU was asked to make sure that we had twice as many beds throughout Greece eventually, in order for our ICUs to happen, or rather to provide services as if we were at war. And so eventually we get 611 incubated patients, and I'm not including in this figure the people who were faced with serious lung disease and needed to be incubated. This is a huge effort exerted on the part of everyone working at the level of the ICU. And it's true that all conscientious citizens were by our side, and they helped us get what we needed, what was necessary for us to work in a safe and efficacious manner. The pandemic we're experiencing is unprecedented. It's unheard of. It has impacted on everyone, but I think technology has helped greatly facilitate our working routine, and communications become simpler and easier, and this is impressive. 10 years ago, maybe, this type of management, this type of working would have been much difficult. But I do realize and see that there is a huge sense of solidarity. I was really positively impressed by the fact that most of the citizens are helping each other, regardless of whether they have the means or not. And another positive thing is linked to the fact that apparently now politicians, statespeople, and the society as such are paying attention to what scientists are saying, and this was not the case before. And I'm hopeful and positive, and hopefully once we get back to a certain normality, this will go on. I'm hopeful that this will continue even after the pandemic. What I've been meaning to insist on is this: a strong and equipped ICU means that we have to have new equipment. Every single ICU needs new state-of-the-art equipment, so we need to equip our ICUs without delays, without red tape, with the necessary material and equipment. So having the right people and equipment at the level of the ICU is the ANZ of making intensive care units more effective and able to keep track of patient progress. And then as properly equipped ICU also means that we have support provided to the staff. We know that there is a sense of fatigue and a burnout syndrome is there, and it happens, and we're aware of that, and it makes people ineffective. Now, the problems that we will have to deal with promptly as soon as the pandemic is over are the following. Mostly, we need to improve the ratio of beds or patients to staff and nursing staff. Second, we need to find experts in ICU, physicians who have been trained at the level of the ICU and can provide such services. We have to find physiotherapists. We have to come up with new or find new equipment. The nurses to beds ratio in Greece has always been unacceptable, and I'm talking about the Greek reality, but compared to global standards, we're considerably lagging behind. It is widely acceptable that we have to have at least 6 nursing staff on each shift for every single bed. Here in Greece, in certain ICUs, we barely get 1 to 1.2 or 1.3, 1 to 3. Normally we have 1 nursing staff for 2. And so we shouldn't forget about the fact that the ICU is the place where people are fighting hard to save lives, and so ICUs are saving on average every year more than 10,000 patients, and they could have been able to save more patients as long as we had more nursing staff, more medical staff, and as long as we had perfectly trained experts, physicians that is. I wish there had been no pandemic, of course, and I could only wish that people wouldn't have to get to know us this way. ICUs have always been there, and people working at the ICU have always been there too, regardless of the pandemic. ICU people have been working always and systematically, seamlessly, day and night, fighting hard to save the lives of everyone. I would advise people to continue to follow the advice of the experts, the physicians, even after the measures become lighter. Let me remind everyone of the fact that there's no miracle theory, not just yet. There's no miraculous remedy either. Nobody is untouchable vis-a-vis COVID, so we all have to conform with the relevant instructions. We have to follow the known guidelines. We have to wear masks, especially inside closed places. And once we've managed with the pandemic, my advice to everyone is to pay special attention to our health. This is very important. Let's show solidarity even after the pandemic, just like we've been through the pandemic. And of course, let's always listen to what physicians are telling us and follow the instructions piously, like we've been doing these days and months. And having said that, let me now highlight the fact that the people working in the ICU, or at the level of the ICU, I would like to show you some images, but unfortunately I can't proceed with the share screen right now. Still failing. I'm so sorry, can't do that. I have been meaning to show you some photos of medical and nursing staff working in the ICUs. And these people wish to extend their thanks to everyone for their support, the moral support that the citizens have been providing to them systematically throughout the pandemic. ICU people are saying, we're here, we will be here, we will be doing the best we can, and we will continue to do so for the sake and the benefit of everyone. We are certain this is what they're going to do, no doubt about it, Mrs. Kotanido, because this is what they've been doing for a year now. In essence, they've been doing it without complaining and working selflessly. They've even fought fire, if you will, and they saved so many people, making a mental note of the fact that you gave us a figure, 10,000 people saved each year, and there could be more. Let us now move to the most emotional part. I suspect this is the most emotional part of our meeting. We will be listening to the first-hand experience of people who work for hospitals. They've worked in ICUs, they're still continuing to work in ICUs, and we will be hearing two people who were treated for COVID and they managed to beat it.
So let me start by Mrs. Eleni Emoniotou. I don't know whether she's still here. She's a doctor at the National Healthcare System from the ICUs Dimitrios Hospital in Thessaloniki. How are you, Ms. Emoniotou? We spoke over the phone. Just a few words. We don't have much time. Just a few words from each one of you, which may be the most important part of this event. What are you going to remember forever from your experience with COVID-19, working in a very difficult part of the country, in Thessaloniki, that well, it was very hard during the second wave in Thessaloniki. My unit worked against COVID-19 during the first wave as well. The second wave was too hard for us, I must say. Thank you to Mrs. Vartinogianni and to Elpida for the invitation. It is a pleasure for me to find myself among so many distinguished people. Usually our discussions are scientific with Ms. Kotanido and other colleagues. Today I'm going to speak from the heart, so allow me to speak referring to myself. What I am never going to forget. I'm never going to forget the first time I entered the COVID unit and closed the heavy door behind me. Despite the fact that I was wearing protective clothing, I felt insecure. I felt that I had landed on the moon. I will never forget the eyes of my colleagues and the nurses when I was helping them dress and undress safely. Their eyes were full of gratitude, but also full of concern about what they were going to deal with. I will never forget the patients I lost. Unfortunately, too many of them during the second wave. I cried a lot because we lost them massively during the second wave. And I will never forget those who made it. I will never forget their look, their eyes, their gratitude, their first words when they came out of the incubator, their thanks. I will never forget the day when I saw my 5-year-old daughter for the first time after 2 months, how much she seemed to have grown. She seemed to have become a different child. I will never forget my relief when my colleague who was on call called me in the afternoon, and he would say, your test is negative, Eleni. And that is how I was able to come out of my nest, as my son called it, and was able to embrace him. I will never forget my anger when I was reading on social media what those who refuse the existence of the virus were saying when after I had spent whole nights working. Very soon I realized that I should not concern myself with those views because they were draining me of my effort. I will never forget the offerings that arrived at the gate of the hospital from family members of their patients. They would phone once a day to hear the news of their relatives whom they had not seen for weeks. and their voices were full of gratitude even when the news were not so good. And finally, I will not forget the violent manner in which my life changed professionally and personally. Sometimes I was feeling as if I was not living what I was experiencing, but it was a role. Of course, the white uniform also helped in this. It felt as if we were elsewhere. Well, we are never going to forget all of you. You say, I'm never going to forget this, that, and the other. We are not going to forget with all of you. I was in touch with nurses because I experienced but also Elpida is not going to forget. That is why we invited you to give us your human experience. Thank you very much for what you have told us. Just one pleasant piece of good news. When I was vaccinated, I felt 100% happiness. It was bliss, because that was a milestone in my this whole experience. It was a light for me. You are quite right. Let us now move on to Miss Eleni Pandelidou, who is the director of the nursing department of the Hippocration Hospital in Thessaloniki. Miss Pandelidou, we talked to each other yesterday. Let us just touch upon one thing very briefly and in a personal manner. When you experience the fight against COVID, and when you're all alone, and the nurse has to become a member of family as well, this must be one of the most difficult parts of your work.
It's very important indeed, but let me first thank the Elpida Association for this honorary invitation. Let me also thank Mrs. Vardinogianni herself. Her work is a beacon. She is a beacon indeed. Thessaloniki and the hospitals of Thessaloniki have gone through very difficult circumstances, especially during the second wave. We managed tough cases, but teamwork indeed came out victorious, and this is the most important thing. The nursing staff, the medical staff were frontline staff. They were the connective link between the family of the patient and, of course, the experts, the people who are in the ICU feel lonely. They just see people wearing these astronaut-like suits, and these people are there inside those suits to make sure that they cater to the needs of everyone, regardless of their age. So we, even using tablets, we use them to facilitate communication between ICU patients and their family. And we at the Hippocration Hippocration Hospital of Thessaloniki have been supportive. Our social workers department provided special services. Our social workers indeed guided and instructed all family members in order for them to deal with procedural matters, red tape issues, and other such issues. But we've been through emotional times and we were moved as well. Let's remember one of these times or one such instance. Please tell us, share it with us. When patients were reincubated, when the patients were moved to a different department, when people were discharged, the tears, the thanks we got, all of that, Mr. Kefalogiannis was the biggest present for us because the pandemic has affected everyone. It has affected our souls, it has impacted on our education, it has affected and influenced our character, every single aspect of our lives. So this was always the most important thing, and of course we could feel the emotional charge, and thank you so much. We are moved and emotional, and I think this was to be expected, says Mr. Kefalogiannis. Thank you yet again, and Mr. Liatsikos is up next. He is a professor of urology Cardiology. He's also the director of the medical service of the Patras University. Mr. Liatsikos, thank you for joining us. Mrs. Kotanidou indeed was to the point and she fully described exactly what's happening in an ICU. My question to you now is this. Have you been the recipient, or rather have you had such stories? Would you say that all of that reminds us of the human nature and how perishable it all is and we are? Yes, Mr. Kefalogiannis.
Congratulations for the organization of the event. I very much liked your question, what I'm never going to forget. I will never forget the first phone call. We were among the first to deal with that in Patras. A bus arrived and the director of the ICU received a panic phone call. Everything had to change right then and there. We became a war zone from one moment to the other. That is what I'm never going to forget. That happened a year ago, and from then on, a chain of events was triggered. It is not the patient who is taken to ICU. It is the patient who arrives at the hospital. The success of the management is that from the moment the person arrives at the outpatient clinic, and whether the person will or will not arrive at the ICU. And it is not an effort only by doctors and nurses. The paramedical staff, people started doing things that they were never required to do, from electricians, cleaners, and many others. There have been many emotional moments also among doctors, because before the vaccine, before our vaccination, we were all risking our lives. We were all risking contaminating our families. And therefore, we had to organize ourselves with the hugely important contribution of our head, of our director, and the ministry. We have learned from our mistakes and have reached a very satisfactory level. You asked about emotional moments. These always have to do with children. I will remind you of the child who was hospitalized in December, and when everyone all over Greece learned the Kawasaki syndrome and the Kawasaki disease. Emotional moment is when we admit a child that's near death, and we are able to keep it and discharge it alive. I don't underestimate older people, but it is always moving to see a child running into the arms of their mother. And history has taught us that in a crisis, Greeks come together. Greeks come together at war. We are all together now, I believe. We each suffer where we need to suffer. What you told us about this child was really very emotional. Elpida has experienced this many, many times when children are the winners. Let us go to Militsa Bizani, who is working at the first ICU unit of the Thessaloniki Papanikolaou Hospital. Can you hear us? My question to you, and it would be very interesting to hear the views of somebody working in the ICU and also is a lung specialist. What keeps somebody going despite being tired, beside all the feelings, and what makes somebody put the other person's life on top of one's own?
In all sincerity, indeed, we've been through times when we felt exhausted and times when we were under a lot of pressure. What was it that kept us going on? To a certain extent, we're going on because we are used to providing such services. We are there to cater to the needs of the patient, regardless of whether we are tired and exhausted or not. We work as if we've been programmed to do that. What inspires us and helps us out, of course, is the outcome. When you realize what you're doing, what you are using on a patient is helping improve the health status of this patient, then this is a great source of joy. This also is a reward in itself. We feel better, and given the current situation, especially now with COVID, that we had these huge cases, very severe cases, as of the moment when you could intubate a patient, you could listen to this patient speak up for the very first time, say a few words for the first time after weeks or months. I mean, this was a huge source of joy, and it was coming from inside. Some can express it in words, others couldn't, but still, all of us felt the same way. We were overjoyed by the fact that patients were recovering, and that was actually one of the main reasons that made us work even harder despite the fatigue, because we were looking for more such cases that would make us feel like that. This is a source of energy. It's energizing and important. There's another source of joy and energy. It comes at the level of the ICU. What you're saying is very moving. We are pressed for time. Please insist on the team, share a few words on its importance. At the level of the ICU, we work as a team. The physicians have chosen to work there. They have chosen to work there because they know each other. They are family. There are close bonds. Even when there is a rift, they are close together, knit together. Whenever someone is exhausted or is feeling down, the rest of the team will support this person. They will either fill in for them or provide them with psychological support. So teamwork is, or rather you see teamwork at play there. Nobody feels alone there. But regardless of the sources of energy and joy, whenever there's a prolongation to any situation, apparently the sources of joy or energy will be exhausted. I know that you are all very, very tired. I do understand that, and you more than anyone. And we would like to wish you all the best. May you have courage and boldness enough to continue your work. I hope we are heading towards the end of this situation, especially if the vaccination campaign proceeds. One last thing, says the lady, but I have to give the floor. Yes, please, says Mr. Kefalogiannis. To Mrs. Pizani, I would like to thank Elpida for this noble initiative. Thank you, says Mr. Kefalogiannis, and over to Mrs. Flingu, who is an associate professor for ICU at the University of Patras. Hello, you've heard everyone that preceded you. Mrs. Flingu, here's my question to you. Your satisfaction equals victory, right? Or other source of satisfaction. The biggest satisfaction you'll ever get will be the fact that you managed to save someone. It's not just material reward you'd like, or maybe a better salary.
Yes. Thank you very much for this, for making me the honor of inviting me. This is very honorable for those doctors and nurses who are still fighting, but also for those who have left us during the pandemic. When somebody who is heavily ill enters the ICU, means that it is a great success for us if they manage to leave and they are well, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. This is a huge a source of huge moral satisfaction for every single one of us working in IC units. You were among the first to experience the difficulty, you in Patras. We heard about it earlier. Do you feel stronger against COVID now than you did then? Yes, so we were the unfortunate first ones to deal with it in Greece. At a point in time when we were preparing to enlarge our IC units, everybody was looking at Patras, and we had somebody who we failed to save, and we were all very disappointed. In Patras, we are all expecting the third wave. Hopefully we will manage to mitigate it. We are very well prepared. We have a plan to increase the number of beds in the wider area, and the beds that were created, let me say, should remain in ICU. The ICU doctor's role has been made known during this period. We were always there. We were always helpful to people who needed us. So now we need to maintain those beds in the post-COVID area. Let me also point out the contribution of private persons through donations. We have much better equipment now. Unfortunately, there is a problem in our communication with Ms. Fligou. Unfortunately, we need to proceed to Ms. Tsouraki because the connection is bad. Still, what Ms. Fligou said is very important, and also the fact that the bed should remain. Now we are going to listen to Ms. Tsouraki. Are you there? Thank you. You are a nurse from Chania, one of those who traveled as a volunteer to Thessaloniki to assist during the second wave. I would just like you to answer one single question. You can describe it as you feel it. What makes a person jump into the fire voluntarily without being asked to do that? Well, let me answer. But first of all, I would like to thank you for making us the honor, honoring us, the COVID unit nurses. What has made me do it is the idea that in such a pandemic situation, we need to move swiftly and decisively. On the other hand, I said I went to nursing school. I've been working as a nurse for the past 25 years. I do my best all the time in order to promote good health, help other people, protect life. And because I believe in the fact that we should help one another, people should help one another, I believe in solidarity. Each and every one of us can contribute to helping people who suffer. And all of this has made me feel that it was my obligation to rise above my ability. And I traveled away from Crete and I returned to the city where I was born, Thessaloniki. What is more important is not to do for one to do your duty, to one's duty, but to know where one's duty is. I think that this is the best and most emotional conclusion from people who fought at the very first line. I wish you all the best. And now let us conclude with two very brief experiences, people who made it, people who have recovered, who are the winners. Miss Anna Rokofilou, she is a lawyer who was treated in an increased care unit at Evangelismos.
Having listened to all of that, I was moved. And I was admitted to hospital. I've been sick with COVID. I was moved, says Mr. Kefalogiannis.
Εσείς πώς αισθάνεστε για αυτούς τους ανθρώπους?
How does this make you feel vis-a-vis these people? Right, thank you, Mr. Kefalogiannis. Let me first thank Mrs. Mariana Vardinogianni and the Elpida Association's members for this whole venture, because the very notion of daily routine heroes have now changed after the pandemic. They are indeed the real true heroes, the people of the ICU. Let me extend my thanks from the bottom of my heart to Mrs. Kotanidou and her team. They were my guardian angels. Mr. Kefalogiannis, I will be sharing a personal experience indeed. First week was very tough. I was lonely. I was alone at home. I had 40 degrees centigrade. I had huge bowel issues during the week when I was at home. And of course, it was tough for me to breathe. Indeed, I couldn't breathe. As of day one, when I contacted Mrs. Kotanidou, I have to underscore the fact that she was absolutely cool and calm. She was determined too, and she convinced me her way. I could feel I wasn't alone anymore. Somebody was thinking about me from a distance. This is actually my own experience, from a distance, says Mr. Kefalogiannis. Indeed, from a distance, says Ms. Yurokofilo. We were on our own, and indeed it was immeasurable. Our loneliness was immeasurable. It's true, says Mrs. Yurokofilo, but then again, as of day one, when I was admitted to the increased care unit, I was feeling so much better. Compared to home, I wasn't alone anymore at any time of day or night. These amazing ladies were there for me. They were not just doing their duty, they took care of me as best as they could. No one had done that before. And now this may sound as a joke. When I was admitted, I asked Mrs. Kotanidou, am I going to die? And she said, no, can you swear I'm not going to die? Of course, you're not going to die. Are you going to incubate me? I swear we're not. This made me feel better. That gave me peace of mind. Although my oxygen levels were really high, I was calm and relaxed after that. Sincerely speaking, I'll never forget about it. My whole life, I never expected any nursing staff to treat me like that. And I was upset, I was saddened. Mrs. Yurokofilo, says Mr. Kefalogiannis, interrupting Mrs. Yurokofilo. I would like to thank them all, says Mrs. Yurokofilo. Maybe, says Mr. Kefalogiannis, this was the strongest medicine. That's true. And you know what? I'm not going to ever forget about the fact that I celebrated my name day at the increased care unit. On the day of my name day, they all entered my room. I knew them by name. Of course, I could not really see their faces, but they entered my room and they sang a song about my name. So they really made me feel so much better, so at least better than what I was feeling at home. I'm really grateful. Of course, I'm moved by such a state hospital. There is such a thing, and we have to acknowledge that this is a state hospital, this is a public hospital, and these are people who work very hard. They are my heroes. To me, they are heroes. They are the heroes of everyone, says Mr. Kefalogiannis. These are everyone's heroes, our heart's heroes. They were always smiling, they made a difference. Yes, and of course we are grateful to the association as well. Says Mrs. Yurokofilo, indeed, thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me. You said thanks 10 times so far, and it's never enough. That's true, says Mrs. Yurokofilo. I'm sure there will be more such opportunities, and we will have personal meetings as well. Bye-bye. And over to Mr. Kostis, who's a professor of Economic and Social History at the Department of Economic Science of the National Kapodistrian University. You were also admitted to an ICU. You are the last, so I want the epilogue through you.
I think that we have had the epilogue, the conclusion, with all our thanks to the medical and nursing staff of the COVID-19 units. What we should always bear in mind is that things are not very simple from the moment one is hospitalized. There are different stages during which they are very trying in many different ways. And at the same time, when one is discharged, one is not always ready to deal with a new reality. There were huge difficulties. I must admit that when I was first placed in the intensive care, I felt rage. I was angry against everyone. I felt that there was no reason for me to be there. That was my feeling, and I was very aggressive against a number of people, including Miss Kotanidou. But then there was a second stage when I had to be re-hospitalized. I had adjusted to the situation. I felt very familiar inside the intensive care unit. The people who were there, who welcomed me, they jokingly they said, "Well, we missed you. Welcome back." And when I left, I was very sad because most of them I could not understand. So the staff, all kinds of staff working in ICU, from doctors to physiotherapists, cleaners, everyone, they were really fantastic. People cannot imagine that. And at the same time, the difficulties are much greater than what we have described, because each patient is a special case. Thank you very much, Mr. Kostis. All of this was very useful. Let's hope that fewer and fewer people will will get the disease. At this point, we can say goodbye. Let us all come together on the screen, if this is possible. Thank you for all the interesting things that we have you have related to us. Ms. Bardinogianni is here again. She has been following all the discussion attentively. I think that she also feels emotional, and she would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Kefalogiannis. Dear friends, I can hardly find the words for me to express how emotional I've been given what you shared with us today. In the face and the words of you all, we felt there's hope that we will manage to get past this pandemic. We will manage to win this tough fight. On behalf of the family of Elpida, let me once again extend to you our thanks, my gratitude, and let me also express my admiration. You're true heroes, and we will bow before you humbly. Thank you for everything you're doing. You are setting the example, and your example is teaching us exactly what it means to be a human being with a capital H. Thank you very much.
So this was a very emotional event, very moving. I was the moderator. It was difficult for me to avoid becoming emotional, to be expected, of course. Thank you for attending, and I'm sure that you all now understand why we call these people heroes, and why Elpida, the Association of Friends of Children with Cancer, to say this big thank you to all of them. Thank you.